Empress Red. So it is June 11th, 2025, and we are currently in the middle of the strawberry moon, the Sagittarius full moon. And what a great moon to have in the sign of Gemini. Gemini and Sagittarius do have some similar energies in terms of their fluidity, curiosity, creativity, and sense of optimism. So we're going to explore that a little bit today. So first and foremost, what is the Sagittarius full moon, and what is it asking us to do? So really it's about learning, it's about growing, it's kind of leaving your comfort zone. Make yourself open to new experiences, exploration, emotionally hopeful, optimistic, maybe setting your intrusive thoughts aside. Let's see what else. The shadow side is, though, because there's always a shadow side, right? There's a good side and a bad side to every sign that you're in, and especially when it comes to the moon signs and how you handle your emotions. With the shadow side, you are in a position where you're going to have to be face to face with your own shadow self. And this is difficult, I think, for probably all of us, right? Where you're in the middle of having to kind of play over and over again, like certain things in which you did not respond very well, whether it was like aggressively or passively, right? Either way, you know, there is some reflection on that. There's a certain amount of personal accountability that needs to take place, which is something I kind of talked about the other night, you know, when I was sitting at the hot tub. But this is great with the Gemini sun, because this gives you an opportunity to not only take a look at your shadow self, but to once you gain a certain amount of accountability, now you're in a position where you can communicate that accountability. So this is going to be really big for people who are hoping to either make amends with someone else in their life, or if or even on at the collective level. We really need that communication right now, don't we? So I was thinking about the high vibrational sense of self, and then there's the low vibrational sense of self, right? So with the moon being in Sagittarius and with the sun being in Gemini, you have a certain convergence of fluidity, right? So the high vibrational aspects of both of these signs together is the convergence of the mind's fluidity in terms of communication, more emotional detachment, actually. And this is a good thing too, because with a lot of this, if you're dealing with emotional matters, it's really easy to get caught up in just like the pure emotion of it. And I definitely understand that just as well as any. You know, I'm a double water fire in my big three, and you know, it's kind of unfortunate, actually. There's some, you know, if I could do it all over again, I probably wouldn't pick my big three again. It's crazy, but anyway, I digress. But so what else? Let's see. Fear has no control. So that is going to be huge, especially with the collective. And I'm thinking a lot about, you know, we have protests that are going on worldwide. LA is huge right now. And there's a lot of good reason for it, right? Because we're seeing ICE is coming in, and they are attempting to like overturn the law according to this administration. And I know I shouldn't get too much into politics, but you know, obviously what is happening is wrong, period. There are American citizens being transported out of here and not being given a ticket back, and we have to do something about that. But this is the month to do it, right? Because right now what we're seeing is this disparity between the two different sides, right? You have these two different extremes that are just going at it with each other, and we need these extremes to stop, right? We need to come together as a collective, maybe set aside the emotional aspect and gain a certain amount of detachment, logic, you know, analysis, in order to come up with solutions that are going to be effective. So in kind of the low vibrational energy area, let's see, ungrounded, bad, impulsive. So here's what's going to happen, right? So we are in a space where communication is going to go into overdrive for this next month, right? Until the sun goes into Cancer, since we're in the month of Gemini right now, one of the biggest things is that we're going to want to communicate. We're going to want to communicate a lot, right? But the thing with Gemini energy is that it can be very positive and not opportunistic, but what's the word? Optimistic. Sorry. It can be a very optimistic energy. The problem is, though, is that if you are going into that need for communicative overdrive and you're not in a positive space, then what's going to happen is you're going to go into like maybe overreaction, impulsive energy, making impulsive decisions. Addictions can get worse at this time, especially if you struggle with communication. You may find yourself in a space where you are self-medicating instead of talking about your feelings. You're also making impulsive decisions in terms of how you respond socially, right? You're also going to be more closed-minded. The communication is very low. So some of the things we're seeing, especially in the collective level, is there's a difference between those who are trying to find a solution. They're operating at more of that high vibrational communication energy. And then you have people who are oppressive, people, groups, collectives, right? They're very oppressive. And they are pushing this existential crisis that we as a collective are essentially having. So at the grassroots level, I think one of the collective effects I was thinking is that at the grassroots level, we need sort of like a redistribution of our activism and our knowledge, right? In order, like as a people, to be more effective against the powers that be that are overstepping what is actually allowed. We do need a greater understanding from the collective regarding the media, and I do think this plays a part in Gemini energy is the media, right? I think people, especially during this period of time, are going to, and I'm not saying that people haven't always started waking up against media manipulation and propaganda, but it's at an all-time high. And I think this month we're going into a space where people are really, really, really starting to see it, because it's not even just like at the TV level. It's not, it's not just Looney Tunes and Donald Duck, during World War II. I mean, that was pretty obvious propaganda. But see, nowadays, with the birth of the internet, and especially with the birth of AI, the kind of propaganda that's floating around now is just astounding, right? So it is imperative that people use this energy, this Gemini Sagittarius energy, to look at the big picture, to see it as a collective, right? To take a look at this and say, okay, this is not real. This is all smoke and mirrors. We don't actually know what the answers are here, because this is not real life in front of me, right? And so you need to discern, or we need to discern, the difference between fantasy and reality. Let's see. I was gonna say Jupiter just went stationary into Cancer, and it's going to remain there for a little while. And I think this is a good thing. Definitely, it's going to bring out a lot of supportive allies, especially those with the LGBTQ, with, women's rights, especially with women's rights. We are definitely in a space where we need more allies. And as we're watching our rights being stripped away, there's something that the collective wants to do about it. And I feel like Jupiter going into Cancer really pushes the collective to really see, like with their hearts, what is going to be most effective. The allies are going to really start coming out of the woodworks a lot more in the next couple of months. I do think that's going to happen. So I think that's all I had as far as the moon being in Sagittarius during this period of Gemini. We've only got maybe another week or so of being in the sign of Gemini. So we do have an opportunity to really take advantage of that creative energy before we move into the more nurturing, Cancer sign. Once we move into Cancer, it's going to be really interesting because patriotism tends to have like a huge pull during the month of Cancer, and I guess that makes sense, right? Because the 4th of July and everything. But that concept of patriotism is changing, and it's evolving. And I do think that during the rest of what we have left of Gemini, that there's going to be a little bit more collective evolution that will end up really influencing how things go over the next couple of months. I do not think we are headed for Gilead. I mean, they're going to try, but the people are not going to allow it. So that's my sense of optimism regarding all of this. I'm watching people really get to the grassroots efforts of all of this, and it is exceptional. It's astounding. I'm personally not able to get out there physically, so I just, I have my donations and try to pay attention, at least try to read up on what's going on. I mean, we have a lot going on just here in our country, and there are the genocides happening, and the people of Palestine are really suffering, and there's just so much in the world that we need to do something about as a collective. And, I'm going to get off my soapbox about this, but just kind of coming back to that moon in Sagittarius, sun in Gemini energy. This is a great energy for movements. It is a great energy for movements, and that's at the collective level, at the interpersonal level, as far as relationships are concerned, friendships are concerned. This is your moment to really like kind of push a certain amount of communication, idealism. Maybe if you're already in a relationship, you might need to sit down with your partner and start making some plans, right? And maybe kind of hash out some things that you guys have not maybe communicated about in a while, in order to move forward. So maybe there's some stagnant energy that was kind of been sitting there since, during Taurus season. And now it's time to get it moving during Gemini season. That being said, I'm going to do a reading, and I'm going to have to move the camera, I think, in order to catch the reading as I'm doing it. So, all right. All right. Okay, let's see what the cards would like to say to us today. Hopefully this will be something interesting, right? Well, of course it's going to be something interesting. It's always something interesting. Okay, so first card. All right, this is going to be, I want to do it like a couple of sides for this spread, right? It's like a 5-card spread, just flat across the board. And what I'm going to do is it's going to be the first side, the second side, what's in the middle, between these two conflicts, and then maybe some, follow-up cards on that. So without further ado, let's see what we got. Ooh. Queen of Cups. By the way, this is the Tarot of Dreams deck. I love this deck. It's wonderful. It's very beautiful, beautiful cards. Also easy to read. One of the things I also like about this deck is that it gives heavy astrology. And for those of us who are astrology nerds, we love this, right? Because it'll give us, a certain amount of feminine energy. It'll give us masculine energy. It'll give us everything in between. But then also, what are our influences, right? Now, the Queen of Cups here, she is actually mostly Cancer with a smidge of Gemini. And that's actually really important because that's exactly where we're at right now, right? So, like, the Queen of Cups represents a person or a collective, a very emotional person, emotional collective, right? Now, we've already just discussed all of this, so this makes a lot of sense, right? There's an emotional matter that has essentially taken on a life of its own. It's everything and everybody are so entrenched in where they're at emotionally and how heightened those emotions are, especially being in, this Gemini energy that's like a lot of heightened experience, right? Heightened. Uh, Communication and other not opportunities, but instances. So what's interesting about the Queen of Cups is, like, she doesn't really have a sense of rationale, right? So I think this makes sense, right? Because where the collective is at right now, there isn't that much of a sense of rationale. I mean, I'm not saying that, people aren't rational, because it's not like there aren't rational solutions. It's the collective right now is not rational. Um, but also, if you were relating this to really like an interpersonal connection, this is heavy emotional energy, like you're missing out on something here when it comes to the communication aspect. All right, so this is the first side. This is side one. This is what this side is dealing with, right? So what is the second side? What do they mean? What do they represent, right? So, and King of Cups. So King of Cups, guys. All right, now let me just bring that in a little bit more. You can take a look at that. You can see that combination of Aquarius and Pisces energy. You see that? Okay, so Pisces is emotional. It's a dreamer. Aquarius is a little bit more inquisitive. Whoops. So with the King of Cups, this is a call to action, right? This is a control card, a power card, anytime you get a king. So the King of Cups, this is going to be, it's a little bit more Pisces than Aquarius, right? So it does mean that this other side is ready to communicate. They are willing to communicate. They do want to talk about their feelings and the emotional matters that they're in, but it's a new stage of development, whether it's in a one interpersonal relationship or the relationship between these two separate sides as a collective. So there is some need to take action. The problem that I'm seeing here is that because we're talking about a relationship between like two different sides, or possibly two separate people, this was meant to be a collective reading as opposed to like a personal reading, but if the shoe fits, right? But it does indicate a need to take charge on one's emotions, right? And so it looks like the King of Cups is in a position of wanting to be able to convey those emotions, talk about it, have some sense of rationale, in order to, maybe not smooth over, but, reassure the Queen of Cups, right? So we've got the King and the Queen here of Cups, right? And somebody is not being filled. And I do mean that figuratively, right? Let's see here. All right, so we need a bridge. What is the bridge? 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 What's the bridge? What's the bridge? All right. Oh, Sagittarius energy here. All right. Temperance. Holy crap. Okay, so let's talk about temperance for a second. All right, temperance is, the temperance card is flat out meant to be like a yin yang thing. It's like, this especially is like water and fires, but if you look at these pictures here, you can even see like the angel here has this equal amounts of fire, equal amounts of water, but also a sense of peace, unity, right? Okay, so we can get to that point. We are looking at, and I know they say that fire and water doesn't mix, right? And but it's not so much that, as much as it's learning how to work. Like if you've ever seen the movie Elements, right? You see like how fire and water came together, and how they were able to create a certain kind of peacefulness, a convergence, right? Um, What a great card. Okay, so this is like telling us that the king and the queen here are going to figure themselves out. They will figure themselves out, but they're going to have to understand something very, very important here. Now, if you're talking about the collective, you're talking fire and water, right? So what's fire, what's water, right? You have one side that has these beliefs over here. You have one side that has these beliefs over here. And at the end of the day, like, their separate beliefs are so trivial and they're fighting over it and they have no idea why, other than the smoke and mirror effect that's been coming at them, right? With temperance, temperance is telling us to say, okay, we can take a look at our differences, but we can also take a look at our similarities and really, try to figure out what it is that we need to do in order to come together, and worry a little bit more about maybe the bigger picture, right? Because there are powers that be that like to keep everyone divided. They like everyone to be divided. They want everyone to be divided. You know why? Because divide and conquer, right? It's a very simple concept. So, what I'm seeing here is that we are going to get to that space. Now, this, because this Sagittarius space, and then of course the moon is in Sagittarius right now. So this is good. This is kind of indicative that sometime in the next couple of days there's going to be some kind of a breakthrough. This is what I'm hoping anyway, right? So there are people who are ready to do some talking. There are people who are ready to combine both the emotional and the rational aspects of all of the things that are going on. Now, if you're talking about like an interpersonal relationship, then what you're dealing with are two people who have been dealing with some conflict for some time, where they're not able to really actually discuss their emotions at an intelligent level. Temperance is telling us that you're going to have to just set all of your like major conflicts aside and find some middle ground, because at some point the fight is not going to be worth it anymore, right? So, okay, so the next card, Eight of Swords, okay? Eight of Swords. All right, there she is, Eight of Swords. All right. This indicates a person or a group that has allowed bias to corrupt or infect their overall sense of growth. It stalls your sense of growth. It stalls your sense of opportunity because you're too busy being stuck in this certain kind of mindset. Now, there is a mindset that at a collective level that we are all struggling with. And I think one of the things that we're struggling with is we're having like a battle of the generations, right? There's one generation that thinks things need to be a certain kind of way, and then there's another generation that thinks that we need to go into a different direction. The Battle of the Swords, it's interesting because this is also a Gemini card. This is a Jupiter Gemini card. Now, that's interesting because Jupiter just left Gemini. And this relates a little bit back to, what's happening between king and queen over here, the emotions versus rationale and taking action. So this is just a reflection really of what I'm seeing over here as far as, these separate groups or these separate people who have been allowing their prejudices to really overtake their ability to think logically and to think with compassion and empathy. It has been actually really a sense of stagnation between either of these two people, if you're coming back to the interpersonal relation. But as a collective, we have really, really gotten stuck in some very, very stoic ideas that no longer serve us. And this is a full moon. This is the time to release what no longer serves you, okay? So the Eight of Swords is asking us to take the things that have imprisoned us in our own minds, our own personal emotions that have imprisoned us into like a low vibrational space. We have a responsibility to move past that, okay? Especially we are in Gemini right now. This is our opportunity to get through it before we get into the sign of Cancer. I'm going to pull one more card, kind of like a, so, you know, what's the word? An epilogue of sorts. Okay, so after the emotional implosion, we are going to get the Nine of Coins. This is Virgo energy here. Venus in Virgo, okay? All right, Venus and Virgo energy. All right, so what's going to happen here? Now, it does look like we are going to be dealing with this conflict all the way through the sign of Virgo. There will be some solutions. They are going to come. There's going to be a lot of retreat into one's shells, right? So there's going to be a lot of hard work. You know, as a collective, like all of the major hard work is going to go on like over the course of the summer. It will be a hard fought battle because you do have these two different sides that are conflicting, and even it's going to get worse before it gets better. You know, Eight of Swords tells us there's going to be some emotional implosion of some kind. It's systematic, it's collective. Everyone's been systematically imprisoned in their own minds, and this has been going on for like, you know, years at this point. You know, it's just been this like for probably 24 years now, and then some. There's been a collective gaslighting going on, and people are remembering things strangely, or not weirdly, but the way that they remember things and the way that history tells us it happened are completely different things. And this was easy to do when everything was on paper, but it's a little harder now that everything is digital. But again, coming all the way back to earlier on, when I was talking a little bit about like where the moon is right now and where the sun is right now, about how that collective energy is, you know, really starting to mentally kind of pop up and say, okay, this is a lot of smoke and mirrors, right? So once we get through this Eight of Swords period of time, which is over the course of the summer, after a certain amount of implosion as a system, right, as a collective, if we can avoid completely succumbing to our prejudices and our biases and really saying, okay, no, this is a human matter. We can't do this, you know? And the allies start coming out, the allies start speaking up and speaking their piece, then we'll get into this Nine of Coins space. Nine of Coins, Virgo Venus, it's basically like being able to ruminate on your hard work. It is a peaceful time, okay? We're going to get into Virgo space. Once we get into Virgo space towards the end of August, things are going to settle down a little bit. And people, I think, especially people who go through this emotional cleansing over the course of the summer, they will get into a space where they're going to go back into hermit mode and retreat into their shell. And that's good because then it becomes a time of transformation, right? So overall, it looks like things will get better, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think it's really important that we take our Queen of Cups emotional energy and we take our King of Cups taking action based on logic. We combine it with temperance. We keep our temper together. We keep our moderation together. That will help us guide through this Eight of Swords period of time where it's going to be a little bit difficult and challenging. And then once we get into our Nine of Coins period of time, things will improve. So anyway, that was my reading. I'm still a novice, I have to tell you, when it comes to reading my cards. I have had these cards for years. I do love them. I'm pretty familiar with them. But I could always be better. We could all always be better. But I do very much give credit where due to those out there who are actually very skilled at reading their cards. You know, I just want to like give a shout out to Sassy Scorpion and also to Balmy Spirit and those lovely ladies always do an amazing job with their readings, and I do very much look up to you guys. That being said, that's going to conclude my reading for the day. And well, that's an interesting reading, I think, to get for the kind of energy that we were looking at when it comes to the strawberry moon that we are in currently. It'll be really interesting once we kind of start heading into this Cancer period of time, because people's emotions definitely are already running high. So if we can get to a point where we can kind of like settle ourselves down and try to come a little bit more emotionally intelligent, we will do okay. So anyway, it is late. I decided to stay up late. I actually work very late, so I don't get home until, 10 o'clock at night. So that being said, I personally need to like go to sleep, and I wish you all just an amazing week. I hope that you can get out and enjoy the weather, and I hope everyone kicks ICE's ass. Anyway, have a great night.